Hey, welcome back to another video, folks. Back on Sling Mountain, of course. Not quite so nice out there today. The sun's coming out a little bit now, actually. It's still really warm though. Had my breakfast outside, so I can't complain. Proper wasp attack this morning. It felt like there was hundreds out there. There's probably about 3 or 4 actually, but felt like there was a lot. You can tell I'm leaning against Sling Mountain today. I'm a bit tired actually. I woke up early. There's this lovely like orange glow onto the curtains, so I kind of ran downstairs to get the camera out for a quick picture of like the sun coming up over the clouds and the mountains. It was really nice actually. The dog was like, "What on earth's going on? Why are we up so early?" I went back to bed, of course. And then, like a lot of us on at the moment on this lockdown, I'm watching like a lot of Netflix. I feel like I've pretty much completed it, to be honest. There's not a lot on there that I want to see that I haven't already seen. So I'm on like Amazon Prime as well. Watched a lot of stuff on there, some good documentaries, some good like climbing documentaries on there. I even watched like a surfing one about Andy Irons. I'm not a surfer in the slightest. I've been once in my life. I didn't really like it, to be honest. Obviously it wasn't very good because it's my first time. It was like properly cold and wet, obviously it was wet. But yeah, not for me. I've never done it again since. But actually that documentary is really good. It's very interesting actually, even if you're not a surfer, so check it out. And there's loads of climbing stuff on there at the moment as well. Loads of real rock stuff, wide boy stuff, redemption, and there's a really good one I wrote down actually because I can't remember what it's called. I keep forgetting. The Search for Freedom, which I think, if I'm remembering rightly, and I've got the right one, isn't a purely climbing film. It's about all sorts of extreme sports. It's actually quite interesting, so check that one out. If you haven't got Amazon Prime, there's a little link below, and if you do get Amazon Prime, you get like a free trial thing, but I get like a tiny amount of money, and any tiny amount of money is good money at the moment, so click on that link if you want Amazon Prime. That's my sales pitch over. 2 parts to today's video, right, all in a oneer obviously, because I don't like doing short videos, that's fairly apparent by now. The first part is going to be abseiling past a knot in the rope, okay? That could be like it's done here, that there's imaginary damage, so we've isolated that damage by doing an overhand. Some people take an alpine butterfly is the right knot to do, both work, just an overhand for me. So going past that, the other scenario could be, and it's the same setup and everything, is you've joined 2 ropes together, which might form part of like a whole sort of crag evacuation kind of thing, you know, all the problem solving stuff. And I haven't forgotten Escaping the System part 2. No, part 3, I've done part 2, check that one out, part 3. But it's the same principle. The second part to it is going to be lowering someone past the knot. And that could be, in the same situation, your mate might be injured or something, so you're actually going to lower them down like 100 metres or 250s together. So you can lower them down 100 metres, and then you can abseil down afterwards on the same rope, and you're going to have to leave it because it's fixed at that point. So you know, there's some pros and cons to this, but we'll look at them both. It's interesting to do. It's quite tricky to do on old Sling Mountain, which is one of the reasons I haven't done it yet, but we'll give it a go, right? This is take 1, so we'll see how it goes. I haven't practiced it either. I think I can remember though. Well, I know I can remember, but I don't know how well it will work on this spot. Right, we're going to have to assume that I'm safe and everything, and I'm using my sling to set up and be safe. So I'll kind of set that up now, but I'm not going to clip it into Sling Mountain. And I've said this in other videos that I kind of, you know, talk about these things and don't always do them. And that's because it just makes things a bit unclear sometimes when there's loads going on. So I will put it on, and I will do my knot in the rope, in the sling, because that's where I normally put something often. But I'm not going to clip it into there. I'm just going to wrap it around my body for now. Okay. Get him on a screw gate though, kind of in readiness, because we will be using it, so it's important to have it on, even though I'm not using it for this example. Okay, so my rope's in place. That's all good to go. I'm somewhere up there, probably, aren't I? I'm just going to make a little step up Sling Mountain. I'm going to put my belay plate on, and you'll notice probably straight away that it's not actually where it would normally be. I've put it on to my belay loop this time, and there's a reason for that, right? Remember what I've said, we're abseiling past a knot. We're planning to abseil past the knot. It's not like a surprise in the rope. If this is like a twist or a tangle when you've been abseiling, well, you're just going to untangle it and launch it off again. This is something you set up in readiness. Now you could be abseiling down, okay, and come across some damage and have to do this on the hoof. If you learn this system I'll show you in a minute, then you can probably adapt what you've got into it, okay? But you know, I think it's just really good to have a play with these things sometimes, to learn a system. it's always going to need some adaptation to it. So have a watch of this, go and practice it, and try some other methods as well, and see the pros and cons of these things, because there's always good points and bad points to every setup, isn't there? Even the worst setups probably have something we can take away from them. I'm not sure or what sometimes, but there's usually something, isn't there? Now, what kind of prosec do we do? Well, by default, abseiling, we do a French prosec, don't we? Because it's releasable under load, and that's really important in this one, and you'll see why in a minute. One prosec, however many reps, I always say this, however many reps you think you need, and then test it. So I'll clip that together, slide it up a bit, pull it, yeah, that's lock-in, great. Get my sling now. So this is like an extended abseil, but we're almost extending the wrong part compared to normal. And I've chatted about this in other videos, why I don't want the prosec to be above by doing this circumstance, okay? As with all these things, there's like exceptions to every rule, isn't there? So the downside of this, right, is the prosec, if it has to do a job, really the ATC isn't doing anything, so the prosec does all the work, it hasn't got its mate helping him out, so it's not ideal, but in this situation I think it overrides the negatives. So I'm just going to bump up a little bit. Apologies if I get out of shot slightly. Okay, so I'm abseiling down, that's all locking up nicely. I've got 15-20 centimetres away from the knot, okay? That's just snug that all up so I don't lose any height when I'm abseiling on my limited space. I'm going to take this off in a minute because I need to go beneath, so I do need to back it up, alright? Oh, there we go, there's a knot in there already. There we go, one overhand, that's my backup knot. That's if everything else goes wrong, this thing's got me. It's going to be quite exciting if all this exploded for whatever reason and I went down the rope onto that, but I'm not going to go all the way to the floor, so it's absolutely vital you have this backup in there as well. Clip it to a belay loop, not to a gear loop or anything, into your belay loop. Right, so I am now like super safe. My prosec's doing its job. Give myself a bit of slack on there, great. Can now get my belay plate out. Don't want to drop it at this point, so let's just make sure we don't by keeping that wire in when I do that little pop. Okay. Next step for me is going to be just banging them into there now. Great. Snug it right up to the knot. Okay, great. That's all done up. Good. Now I'm going to release this in a minute because I have to go past that. So let's just get another prosec out because I always carry two, you know, trad climbing or any sort of multi-pitch kind of stuff really. And let's get him on. So again, I'm going to do something that is not my sort of normal preferred method, but it kind of works for me here. Going to do my wraps around the rope, still going to be a French prosec because I want it to be releasable under load and everything. Clip them together, get myself a screw gate, I've got one left thankfully. Okay, that's going to go into where? Leg loop this time because I need to maintain a bit of a gap between those two things. So actually I'm on a new setup now, aren't I? Let's just keep that apart so it's all clear. That's doing its thing, the prosec up there, but I'm below that knot now with my setup. It's just not really doing anything yet. So let's get that right up to there, lock him down. I'll probably slide this prosec up as well. Still on my complete catastrophe knot here if things did go terribly wrong. And now I'm going to pull really hard on this French prosec, that's why we made a French, so it releases under load. And then look what's happening. I'm going further towards the knot. I hope I don't go out of shot for here. I'll come back this way a bit, that's a good idea. Okay, now I'm onto that. Great. So I can get rid of this now, can't I? If you feel you want to let go completely, then back that prosec up and everything. And away we go. Abseil, abseil, abseil. Don't get banged into that though. Make sure you ditch that as well. So you can do that kind of, probably do that all one-handed, can't you? That's all good. And you're off to glory. Okay, great. Well, that works, didn't it? It's not my ideal method, remember, because I'm not the biggest fan of having that on the leg loop and that up there. So you've got to make sure you maintain a distance between that and that. But that works. I quite like that way of doing it. Could you do it with an extended belay plate when you get to this point? Yeah, absolutely you could. So maybe that's worth a try. principles are going to be exactly the same, aren't they? You've just got to work with the distances a bit. So have a play with it. That's the key for me, right? Nothing really is going to change in the ideas, is it? Also have a play if you're doing it with having your extended belay on, abseiling, and then going, oh right, crikey, I've got to that imaginary damage, tie your knot in, and then you're going to have to do some extra bits, aren't you, to convert it into somehow locking and being able to take this off. So the top tip there, when you're playing with it, is to put a second prusik on. So you're abseiling as normal, you get to that knot, put that top prusik on, and then do what I've just done basically. So have a go with that and let me know how you get on, alright? Good. Part 2 coming up in just a second. Right, part 2, not 4, 2. What we need to do now is look at luring someone past a knot, okay? So we need a proper belay for that, as always, of course, so let's do that first. Get that little join out the way, 2 points, 3 points, whatever you need to do, just for now, this will work for us. None of this sliding X stuff now. I'm going to do a proper setup. And I'm going to do it with a PowerPoint type setup, and that's where I do my kind of overhand type knot, something like that. And it'll become clear why in a minute, as hopefully most of these things do. I've got my training weights down there that are going to be my unconscious climber or, incapacitated climber. First thing I'm going to get is a big fat HMS, and I'll say it again, I would be clipped in and staying safe, but to keep things clear, I am going to not do that in this instance. Right, my climber is here, ready to be lowered. I could do this on an ATC or whatever, but because I've planned to do this, I think that this is going to work better. And just for this demonstration, I'll have that coming out the front. Right, first thing I'm going to do is put a prusik on this rope here, right? Kind of like the clutch prusik that we've done before in other rescue stuff. And again, releasable under load. This would be potentially a bit of a pain in the butt if you didn't have it releasable under load. So it's going to be the old French as usual. Get myself a screw gate. Got to be a screw gate. These are important things going on here, I reckon. Clip him into that metal on metal again. You can see, as I've banged on about before, that actually metal on metal is so good sometimes, right? So that's going to stop the lowering at some point. That's the kind of idea of that. And I want a second Italian hitch up here. That's why I've gone for this method, so I've got a bit of a shelf to work with. So let's just put a knot in here to pretend that's where we've joined the ropes or where we've got the damage in the ropes, because it's the same setup, isn't it, right? Now, I'm going to, in readiness, I'm going to pre-tie an Italian hitch in this side. Get him in. And, like we said, put him up here. Okay. And, of course, do him up. Now, what I'm going to do is just haul my climber up, so I'll probably cut that bit out, actually. Okay, so you join me having actually put some weight on this now, so you're going to have to imagine that this is a climber, right? Now, we're lowering them down, we're lowering them down, we're lowering them down, and now I've got really close to this knot. This is the join in the ropes, or where you put a knot to isolate some damage. At this point, I'm thinking, right, well, actually I need to transfer onto this second knot now, so I'm going to push that prusik away, let him grip, encourage him to grip by pulling it down and helping it. We don't want this knot here to touch this Italian hitch and not be able to do what we need to do in a second. If all this went tight, you'd be in trouble because you wouldn't be able to release it very easily. Right, so you can see now that prusik is taking the strain. It's not me, right? This is all floppy. Going to keep a hand on it though, because you know my sort of general mistrust of prusiks really. What can we do now then? Right, I can feed a bit of slack through, just check to see how that prusik's just kind of deforming as a bit more weight goes on it, so I'm still really checking it. It is gripping as it all just goes in nice and tight. Back up, so what I want to do is make sure I've got hold of this one now. Can't undo this because this is my damage bit, so let's just make sure that's nice and snugged up there. Carefully, because I don't want that prusik to slip or anything, I can get rid of that, okay? If it did slip, I'm still on a proper solid point here, aren't I, okay? Right, what have we got going on now? Let's get this all tightened up. nicest way to tighten that would be that, wouldn't it? So it's already flipped the right way, okay? This is still a bit of slack here, okay, and that's fine. Want to make sure this doesn't hit that now as well. And a bit like the last one, let's make sure he's done back up anyway. It doesn't really matter at this point too much, but we don't want anything bad to happen. I'm going to push that prusik up just nice and slowly. Can you see how it's slipping now? My climber is going down. How much force depends on how heavy your climber is and rope prusik combos and everything. So I'm just doing it nice and slow because it'd be flipping scary to be going quick, wouldn't it? Especially rope on rope kind of action. Look at that top Italian hitch now. It's going to start taking the strain. Okay, great. Just watching everything to make sure it's all going well. Okay, good. Ah, perfect. Look at that. That's gone slack. I can get rid of that now. Happy days indeed. Let's get him out for a sec. Slide him up a bit more. There we go. You can see, right, if that was much longer, that gap to that Italian, this would have all fouled up and I wouldn't have been able to release it. So you want this knot as close to that as possible. It all just sort of tightened up and went down a little bit then. Now we can ditch that prusik, get him out of the way. Ooh, make sure you don't drop him because you might need it. Well, you will need it because we know that we need 2 prusiks for abseiling. We're going to be doing that in a minute. And now you just go into normal lowering, don't you? And away you go. Pretty cool, isn't it, right? So we can now abseil past a knot, and we can also lower past a knot. The whole key for that bit is, and re-watch it again, you might need to, is to get the distances right. So it does need a bit of practice. If you get it right first time, yeah, good effort. You probably need to do it a few times just to get it sort of really fine-tuned. But the key is setting it all up in readiness, right? And we can, because we're always checking ropes for, you know, cuts and stuff like that, or if we're going past a join, we know we're going past a join. So there's no point not having all this ready to go from the outset. It'll be different, you know, if you haven't checked your ropes, something's happened and you're lowering away, and then you come to a bit of damaged stuff. Well, then you have to tie off the belay, the belay device, which is an Italian hitch in this instance, to tie that off, and then you can settle that up. It's still doable, isn't it? Absolutely, it's doable. But normally, I think if you're going to have to do this, you probably know beforehand. How likely are you to have to do this? I hope that you never have to do it. Basically, touch wood. I've never had to do it for real. You know, I've practiced it, so that whole phrase, tools in the toolbox, again, I give myself a virtual slap for saying it. You know, I want to be able to do it, so if I do have that issue, I can solve it, and I do know people who have done it for real, and you know, I'm sure they're very glad that they had these skills and they practiced their skills. Go and practice it out of your tree, on your banisters or whatever. For this lowering one, do get a bit of weight on the end, even if it's someone leaning back, your wife, girlfriend, kids, whatever. Then do lean back and, you know, do it properly. It works well that way as well. But just really work on getting those distances right. That's the key to it all. If it jams up, you've got some fancy stuff to be doing. It's going to be a right headache for you. Hey, I hope that was a useful one. I know it's a bit hard to sort of see what's going on a little bit on sling mounting because I'm a bit sort of cramped up space-wise, but hopefully it was worthwhile. It's worth a bit of a play. Do fire away with any questions. Don't forget on that abseil one to practice going from like an extended version, having to do it from scratch that way. If you haven't known you're going to come across that join or whatever, but do the standard way that I did earlier in the video first off, I reckon, and see if you can evolve it. It's good fun, isn't it? It's a great thing to be doing on this lockdown stuff, topping up all these skills that, you know, the best one in the world. We all kind of know we should practice them, but do we practice them? Yeah, sometimes we do, but most of the time we just want to go climbing. So I think it's great if we can practice this stuff, even off the banisters, off your fence post, anything that's relatively solid during this time. So yeah, I hope that video is worthwhile. As I say, please comment away. Click that like button, smash the subscribe button. We're doing quite well on that, so thank you very much if you've done it already, and thank you very much in advance if you haven't and you are going to do so. That'd be much appreciated. As I always say, massively grateful for all the support you guys have been giving me, so mega thumbs up from me. Yeah, thanks again for watching. More videos coming up very soon.